God the Son, Jesus, becomes a human being, he limits himself. And one of the things he obviously limited is his knowledge. Jesus clearly said, "No one knows the day or hour of my return, not the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." See, when Jesus walked on earth, was he omnipresent? No. He lived in Palestine, in Israel. He was not omnipresent. He limited himself. When Jesus walked on earth, did he limit his power? Yeah, he allowed human beings to nail him to a cross. He could have blasted them into oblivion. He didn't. He limited his power. So what you're dealing with is the amazing mystery of the incarnation, that the creator of the cosmos, part of the creator of the cosmos, God the Son, chose to limit himself and become a baby, grow into a man, die on a cross, be buried, rise from the dead, ascend to heaven now, but he clearly limited himself. And sir, that's why he said in Matthew 24, "No one knows the day or hour of my return, not the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father."
Acknowledging that there's order does one thing, and that acknowledges that there's order. That doesn't then imply that there's a designer. You have to prove the existence of the designer by having evidence. You do.
You don't. You don't have to prove anything. It's an issue of evidence, not proof. I can't prove that you and I are having this conversation. This conversation might be a dream.
Evidence is the proof.
No, evidence is not proof.
Yeah, well, no, we have astronomical evidence to support evolution by natural selection, and people believe that because there's evidence.
Because there's evidence.
Not
proof.
Okay, so where's the evidence that there is a creator? That's not evidence of a creator. That's
of course there
evidence
is.
that there's order. That's evidence that there's order. That's not evidence that somebody is organizing.
Sir, if 100 times out of 100, in my observation of life, I see that order and design comes from an intelligent mind, it is more reasonable for me to believe that there's an intelligent mind behind the order and design of this universe than it is reasonable for me to believe it's all an accident.
I'm not saying it's an accident. I'm saying that over the past 13.4 billion years that the universe has existed, at some point, due to the vastness of the universe, at some point order would arise.
Really?
Because it's an argument of probabilities.
Yeah,
at some point it's probable that order will arise.
So let's you and me play poker, and I'm going to deal 4 times. And every time I deal, I get 4 aces. And you ask me, "Hey Cliff, how on earth can you deal hands in poker and 4 times in a row get all aces for yourself?" And if I say to you, "Well, because there are an infinite number of universes, and you just got to realize, sir, that in this particular universe, when I deal poker cards, I get aces all the time." You have a reason to pull out your 6-shooter and say, "Really? You're ripping me off." And if I hide behind, "Well, there are millions of universes, and it just so happens that we live in a universe where whenever I deal poker cards, I get 4 aces every time." That's ridiculous. It's stupidity. It's irrational, and you know it.
Yeah, but nobody's hiding behind the fact that there's millions of universes. Nobody said that. I said millions.
Richard Dawkins does. Richard Dawkins says there are trillions of universes, and so therefore this one just sort of popped into existence. Oh, come on. Yeah, well, he's one of the new atheists who's written a lot
I
about
would
it.
love to read that Richard Dawkins quote, because I've never heard Richard Dawkins say that. Not
Well,
once
he's
in
in
my life.
multi-universes.
I mean, if he does, he probably has scientific evidence.
No,
to back
there's
it
no
up.
scientific evidence
I mean,
that there's a
there's-
universe outside our universe.
Physicists agree and disagree on multi-universes, but that's not the argument that we're making. You're trying to say that there's an organizer because there's order.
Exactly. Because 100 times out of 100, in my observation of life, order and design points to a designer. Clothing. If you tell me there's no tailor behind this, that's absurd.
Okay, but I'm saying you're using your preconceived beliefs.
No, sir, I'm using my experience.
No, you are.
I'm
Because
using
what
your
you're saying
experience.
is you're like, oh,
you have it, and you know it, and you know it.
No, what you're saying is oh, life exists. It's ordered. There's order and there's a structure to it. So there has to be somebody creating it. That jump, it doesn't. That
That's
doesn't
not what I'm
belong
saying.
there.
I haven't gotten to life yet. I told you I'll get to that.
Okay, fine.
You've asked me why I believe God exists, and I said my first piece of evidence is order and design points to some type of intelligent mind. That's all I've said. And if you have a different experience, tell me. If you can show me how order and design comes about by accident, I'd love to hear it. I'm waiting.
I mean, if we're going off of the assumption that the universe didn't start from something or someone.
No, we're not. You've asked me a question, a very good question.
Okay, well, I mean, look at
why do I
order,
believe an intelligent mind, God exists? And I'm saying the first piece of evidence is order and design. That's all I've said. Now, let me hear your comeback.
So what you're saying is there's a presence of order and design in the universe.
There's order and design in this universe I live in. My experience shows me that.
Okay, so if that's what you're claiming, that there is order and design in the universe present right now,
yes,
then I can agree with you on that.
Good.
There is order and design in the universe present right now.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that.
Okay. So order and design points us to some type of intelligent mind, some type of God.
Okay, see, that's where I disagree.
Okay, fine.
That's where it doesn't, just because there's order, it doesn't then lead that there's an intelligent designer behind it.
Explain. Back that up. You made a statement, but you're not backing it up with anything. I backed up. Order and design leads to me understanding there's a designer because 100 times out of 100, in my experience, so just please tell me your experience, where order and design comes about by chance. I'd love for you to tell me. When does order and design, in your experience, come about by accident? I'm waiting.
Evolution?
What does that mean?
Not by accident, but by natural selection.
Don't you see what you're doing? You're blindly assuming that evolution as an origin is true. That's a crock,
no,
sir.
I'm not blindly assuming. I'm using the
Well, then
evidence
back it
that
up.
I've been Do you want me to present the evidence for evolution?
No, evolution as an origin. I know there's plenty of evolution as a process, but what you're arguing is the order and design of evolution comes about by chance. Please show me the creative mechanism in evolution. I'm waiting. Where's the creative? Not adaptation, but where's the creative mechanism in evolution?
Okay, so now you're saying, so then you just said that order can come about by chance, but then you're saying that there needs to be creativity involved in
You've
it?
got to be kidding me. I've said the opposite. I've said order and design do not come about by chance. You say it does, so give me an example.
Of order and design coming about by, I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. Like, evolution is literally, I mean, that shows that there's order. Structure in life is order. And as far as we're concerned, as far as we know, evolution did come about by chance. Evolution came about by chance.
That's what we're debating. The universe, nature. Just don't tell me that. I can't say to you, God exists because there's order and design. I got to say, my experience, my observation of life is that order and design never comes about by chance. It always points to an intelligent mind. Second piece of evidence that God exists is I observe that life comes from life. Life never comes from non-life. I don't care if it's plant life, animal life, human life. You never have life come from non-life.
That's not true.
All right, fine. Then show me. Where does life come from non-life?
I mean, we can look at a biology 2 textbook, and we can see how life started. And we have evidence to support that. Evidence, real evidence.
Give it to me then. If you have it, give it.
You want me to explain to you how life started?
How life comes from non-life. That's what I want you to explain.
Okay, well, actually, we have experiments that show that we can recreate DNA.
Thank you. Recreate. We, intelligent beings, can recreate. We, living beings, can create life. Very good.
Just pump the brakes. Pump the brakes a second. You can create DNA. There's multiple experiments that have tested this. You can create DNA through just a little bit. You have nitrogen, oxygen, carbon,
right.
And you put it into a cell, basically, or into a chamber, and then you put electricity or energy through it. And now biologists believe that what happened is that in the early stages of Earth, there was lots of electricity in the atmosphere, and there was also hot spots due to volcanoes, creating thermodynamic energy, which then created, due to the fusion and the fission of these molecules, nitrogen and oxygen and carbon, they created branched chain amino acids, which are the building blocks of DNA. And then if you get lipid, you can create something that's called a protocell by the DNA going into the lipids, right? And then what happens is the chemistry inside the cell and the chemistry outside the cell are different. From there, multiplication happens, and then you eventually get multi-celled colonies and multi-celled organisms from that through evolution. That's the evidence that life started from something that is not life.
You just told me in a lab with intelligent minds, scientists,
I'm telling
certain
you
things can happen.
that was recreated.
Sir, it never occurs in reality that life comes from non-life by accident. You never have it. Never once. And you know it if you're going to be honest.
Who's like in biology, or it's pretty obvious to anyone that's taken an introductory biology class, how life originated. It's covered in bio too. I mean, it's not super complex topics, and there is ample evidence to support it. And what I'm saying is the study was a recreation of the early atmosphere of the universe in order to simulate the early atmosphere of the universe.
How well do we know the early atmosphere of the universe?
I mean, pretty well. We have a pretty good understanding of what molecules were very present due to the death rate of stars at that time in the universe.
Right.
And that's going to tell us the abundance of molecules at what percentage.
You bet. And that's what Dr. Stanley thought he had all that wrapped up at the University of Chicago. The only problem is NASA proved that Stanley was wrong in his guess about what the earliest atmosphere was comprised of. No, sir. We don't know exactly what the earliest atmosphere was like. We're continuing to grow in our understanding of that. Third piece of evidence that God exists is moral absolutes, objective morals. You know very well that the abuse of an innocent child is never good. It is always wrong. The only way there can be an objective moral is if there is some type of God to create innate human value and a value of justice that is intangible. Sir, all your biology can tell me is...
I don't believe in objective morality, so I think...
Yes, you do.
No, I don't. So I think that this argument...
You use the word should and ought, don't you?
That doesn't mean that I believe in objective morality.
Well, when you say should and ought, what are you talking about?
That means that I have my own morals that I think people should do and ought to do. That doesn't mean that there's an objective morality that's correct for all people.
Where on earth do you get off saying, you should not have done that to me, if it's just your personal opinion that you realize is biased, prejudiced, and totally relative? Why on earth would you be so arrogant to tell this guy what he can do and what he can't do?
So, morality to me, all I can speak is for myself. Morality to me is based off of the society and the societal pressures to go towards one or another thing. Because there are, I mean, you know, obviously, like, look at Jewish people. I mean, to me, circumcision can be considered immoral. It's genital mutilation. I mean, look at Muslim people. They do that to women. They generally mutilate women in a lot of Muslim countries. So is that objectively good or is that objectively bad? Well, I mean, I think it's wrong because of the society I grew up in.
Okay.
Now, I think most people can agree that's probably wrong, but not all people can. So there can't be an objective moral reasoning there. It's not objective for all people because throughout societies and time, morals have waxed and waned with the society. So I think it's more intelligent to assume that morality comes from the society and societal pressures than being innately human. I mean, if we can even look at Germany during World War II, the amount of people that were pro-Holocaust, that's objectively, I mean, we can assume that's objectively wrong for most people, but objectivity means for all people, right? So we can play with that word and say for most people and use it as a for most people kind of argument, but really it's entirely subjective because it depends on the society.
Okay, Nuremberg trials. You brought up Nazi Germany, so let's talk about it. Nuremberg trials,
I mean, are you going to address what I just said about the objective?
Can you let me finish?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Nuremberg trials, 1945 to 1949. The Nazi lawyers were brilliant. They stood before the Allied judges and said, I hope you realize that these Nazi officers were commanded to gas Jews into Dachau and Auschwitz. Their culture, their superiors, taught them that gassing Jews into Dachau and Auschwitz was good. Where do you guys get off, coming from a different culture, judging these Nazi officers? And the Nuremberg trials shut down. Until Robert Jackson, the American counsel, stood up and said, wait a second, there is a law above the law of culture, and according to this moral law, it is evil to gas Jews into Dachau and Auschwitz. The Nuremberg trials kicked into gear again. Why? Because there was an acknowledgement that morality is not defined by culture. Because if it's true what you say, that morality is defined by culture, the Nazis were just following their culture. And there's nothing wrong with gassing Jews if your culture tells you to gas Jews. Baloney to that. You and I have consciences and rational minds, and we understand that just because a culture teaches something is good does not make it good. That is why I'm telling you, the evidence of the way you live your life, the way the judges of the Nazis in the Nuremberg trials lived their lives, is that there's got to be some type of objective morality that we are able to understand with our consciences and our rational minds. And guess what? If that's true, there's got to be some type of mind, maybe minds, as you pointed out very accurately, some type of mind or minds pre-existent to human minds that defines what is right and what is wrong. Does that make any sense?
No, I get what you're saying. I think that's more due, why they did that is more due to the fact that it's what brings about the most good for the most amount of people possible. So I mean, if we're talking about that being objective morality, if that's like the basis of what you consider objective morality, that's how you're going to define it, as what brings about the most amount of good for as many people as possible. I mean, I still think as a society, as a human society, we have things and different sects in our society that agree with different things that others would find immoral that we don't stop. There are things across the globe that we don't stop that most people in the United States or in other parts of the established world would find as immoral, but we don't stop it. But it's because and they don't find it immoral. That's what I'm saying, is if there's other people that don't find it immoral because of how they were brought up and how they were raised in the society that they were raised in, even if it's something small, if we can't all agree on the same morals objectively, then there's no such thing as objective morality in total. If we can't all agree on every single moral, and we can't all share the same objective morality for all people, then how can you argue that there's an objective morality?
Very, very simply. The professor who said to me, the only way that I can know something historically is if everybody agrees that this happened. And I had to look at that professor and say, you are so intellectually naive, it's scary. Just because someone denies that slavery happened in the United States does not mean that in reality slavery did not happen in the United States. And if you think that I got to get 100% agreement that slavery really did happen in the United States in order to believe that slavery happened, that is such a blind spot, it's incredible. Similarly, to say that racism is wrong only if everybody agrees that racism is wrong is so blind, it's scary. I better have the conscience and the intellectual wherewithal to realize that because God created her and him in his image, therefore racism is wrong.
No, so what I'm
saying,
saying,
I'm not in touch with reality.
No, so what I'm saying is there are definitely things that are more good or more bad for society. There's such a thing as, that not having slavery is objectively the most good for as many people as possible. That one thing. But how can you argue that humans have objective morality or a gifted objective morality by a creator that created all humans? How can you argue that if all humans don't share the same morality?
Because we have a free will. And at times I know what's good. And instead of doing what I know is good, I do the opposite. Sir, that's why I experience guilt. I know what's right very often. And instead of doing what I know is right, I do the opposite. And guess what? Part of the reason I feel so comfortable sharing that is, you're no different from me. At times your conscience tells you that is good, and instead of doing that, you do the opposite. And then by golly, you experience guilt. Bravo. Now allow your guilt to wake you up to the fact that you know very well what's good at times, and you choose to do the opposite. Therefore, you have to answer to somebody. You answer to God. Therefore, ask him for forgiveness. Ask Christ for forgiveness for the wrong that you've done. And don't just blame somebody else or rationalize your guilt away.
Nobody's saying that you blame somebody else. You obviously own up to your own guilt.
We do it all the time.
Yeah,
we blame other people all the time as a human race.
People definitely do, but that doesn't mean that there's a God that you can give your forgiveness
it means that there are real values that I understand, be I atheist, agnostic, Christian, Buddhist, whatever. And I violate my conscience by doing that which I know is wrong. It happens every day to every single one of us.
But there aren't real values. There aren't values. There are values that are best for as many people as possible. That's what I've said.
Fine. So I smack her in the face. You ask me, hey, Cliff, why'd I do that? And I say, because I felt like it.
That's what I'm saying. That would bring about the exact opposite of the most good for as many people as possible.
According to your definition. I hope you're not naive enough to think that Adolf Hitler did not know exactly what would bring Nazi Germany the most good. It was getting that economics machine back into gear because the Germans were suffering from poverty. And so Adolf Hitler had a very shrewd way of getting the Nazi economy back into gear. And guess what? It was evil. Totally evil. But if you're telling me that, no, Cliff, good and evil are really defined by culture, by a nation, then what he did was not evil. It was just a way to kick the German economy back into gear.
Okay, so yeah, what Nazi Germany did, you just said it was evil, so that definitely does not bring about the most amount of good for as many people as possible. I feel like I have to repeat myself 7 times.
Well, I gotta feel like I gotta straighten you out, sir. You honestly think that the Nazis thought that gassing Jews was bad for Germany?
You're gonna beat him up?
I'm not gonna beat him up. He's a great thinker, okay? And I appreciate him so much thinking, okay? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right? But his thinking is so, it's scary.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that. I do think that Adolf Hitler thought that that was what was best for Germany. I do think that he genuinely thought that. Now, what he thinks and what's the best for the most amount of people possible is not always the same thing. That's what I'm saying. My argument is that if all people don't agree on all morals, which we have both agreed that they don't.
Right.
Okay, if all people don't agree on everything moral, then how can there be an objective morality?
Very simple.
That's objectively true for everyone.
Very simple. This guy is of a different race than I am. It makes me feel better about my whiteness to be racist towards him. Now, if you're going to tell me that it's wrong, I'm going to tell you take a hike. Because my identity, my self-image, is based on being superior to him. I'm standing here saying that's a humongous tragedy on my part. Because in reality, he is just as valuable as I am. Not because I'm a white intellectual at UT, but because he's created in the image of God. He has an innate value because he's a human being. He's not a cockroach. He's not an ant. He's not just a material part of the evolutionary cycle. He's a human being created with a soul. And therefore, if I dump on him, that is evil. And guess what? I can get a bunch of white guys to agree with me in my racism. It doesn't make it right just because a social contract is made by a bunch of white guys that say white supremacy, whites are better than brown, than black, than Asian. I'm standing here saying, you know, hopefully, objectively, that that is wrong. Why do you know that? Because this man is not an accident. He's a human being created in the image of God.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm still falling back on the same thing that I've had to say 7 times, which is that, yeah, if you're racist and you have a group of your racist buddies that all agree with you, that still also being racist does not bring about the most amount of good for as many people. It's a utilitarian approach to morality. That's what most people kind of agree with. Most people. That doesn't make it objective. Objective truth is something that is true for all people. That's an objective truth.
Yeah.
So you have even said that all people do not agree on morality. So there is not an objective morality.
Yes, there is. It's an objective morality that because we have a free will, we contradict. What I'm saying is, if I have a racist attitude towards him, if I have a sexist attitude towards her, I am wrong. I am wrong. Why? Because racism is a denial of his value, and sexism is a denial of her value.
So, you say that there's an objective morality, and that's one of the proof facts or whatever, that's why there is a God, right? Well, then how do you explain the change in morality over time since we started, like, as humans, and morality has changed over time to where we are now? And to me, that's not objective morality. That is subjective morality.
Okay.
Because it changes.
All right.
And how can you, like, so we're talking about objective morality now, or are we talking about all the way over time? Because I agree with what he's saying. I think he's doing a great argument Because, like he said, not everybody has the same morals as somebody else. It's all subjective. It's not objective.
Okay. And I'm standing here saying, I don't care if I get 10 people to agree with me that white is superior to brown. That is objectively wrong. I don't care how many people believe it. I don't care if the Dred Scott decision in the U.S. Supreme Court insists that white folks are much more invaluable than black folks because they're just 3/5 the value of white folks. I don't care if the U.S. Supreme Court says it. I don't care if the culture says it. I don't care if the majority of students at UT Austin say it. There is an objective justice, value of justice. And you know that and I know that when you critique what's wrong.
But then how do you explain the unfortunate past that we have where people did believe that and that was on their morals, even though it's wrong, we know that it's wrong.
Right.
It still was how they thought and how they believed back then. And so I'm asking you, how does this objective morality apply to now, past, and future?
Good.
Because in terms of God and religion, he's overseen all of this time, all of this everything, and he's watched all these humans and had a hand in play in all of this. So
Good.
How does your objective morality point stand for past, present, and future?
You bet.
How is it not subjective?
God's character is holy and just and good. God created. Therefore, the 10 Commandments are not the 10 suggestions. Murder is always wrong, past, present, future. Adultery is always wrong, past, present, future. Lying, always wrong, past, present, future. Stealing, always wrong, past, present, and future. And when we human beings murder, commit adultery, lie, steal, past, present, and future, we are violating the value of justice that has been created and defined by a good, consistent, holy, just God. He's given us consciences, and past, present, and future. I don't care if it's Cain and Abel. I don't care if it's somebody who murdered Gabby Petito, and I don't care if it's someone who murders in the future. Murder is absolutely evil. Not because I'm a brilliant white liberal intellectual. No. It's because God has created all people with intrinsic value, innate value. That's why murder's wrong.
Thank you for joining us for these few minutes. We'd like to personally invite you Sunday mornings to St. Paul's Episcopal Church, located in Darien at 9 a.m., or to Grace Farms at 10 a.m. in New Canaan, Connecticut. Check us out more online at www.gracecommunity.info to learn more.